Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Auntie Gray Speaks. I need you to sit down for this one. I need you to put everything else aside, because the story I am about to tell you is one of those stories that will sit with you for a long time after it ends. This is the story of Caroline Marie Whitfield, a woman who thought she knew everything about the man she loved for 31 years. She found out the truth at his funeral. Carolyn grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, a quiet, careful girl who read everything she could get her hands on it, dreamed of being a librarian. She became exactly that. For 34 years she worked at the public library in the Midtown neighborhood of Memphis, surrounded by books and children and the particular peace that libraries hold. She married Thomas Whitfield when she was 28 years old. Thomas was a civil engineer, steady, reliable. The kind of man people described as solid. He was not flashy. He was not romantic in the grand storybook way. But he was there. Every day, he was there. They had 3 children together. 2 sons, Robert and Charles, and a daughter named Diane, who got her mother's love of reading and her father's stubborn chin. 31 years. A good house in East Memphis. Grandchildren, Sunday dinners, vacations to the Gulf Coast every summer. Caroline was happy. She was genuinely, completely happy. Thomas died of a heart attack on a Wednesday morning in September. He was 64 years old. He had been at a city planning meeting, completely ordinary, completely routine, when he collapsed. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Carolyn got the call at 11:47 a.m. She was cataloging new arrivals at the library. She sat down on the floor right there between the shelves. She stayed there for a long time. The service was held 6 days later at Greater Faith Baptist Church, the church where Thomas and Caroline had been married, where all 3 children had been baptized, where their family had sat in the same pew every second Sunday for 3 decades. The church was full. Thomas had been respected in the community. His colleagues came, his neighbors came, his old college roommates flew in. Carolyn sat in the front row between her sons Robert and Charles, with Diane holding her hand. The service was beautiful. The eulogies were warm. The choir sang Thomas's favorite hymn, and Caroline let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since the hospital. After the service, during the repast at the church fellowship hall, a woman approached Caroline. She was maybe 45 years old, tall, composed, dressed in a dark blue dress that was appropriate and careful, in the way that someone wears when they are trying very hard to be invisible. She had a boy with her, a teenager, maybe 15, 16 years old. He had Thomas's forehead, Thomas's hands, Thomas's way of standing with his weight on his left foot. Carolyn looked at this boy and felt something shift in the ground beneath her. The woman introduced herself as Angela. She said she was sorry for Caroline's loss. She said Thomas had been a part of her life for 17 years. She said the boy standing beside her, the boy with Thomas's hands and Thomas's forehead, his name was Marcus, and Thomas was his father. Caroline stood completely still. She did not fall. She did not faint. She did not make a sound. She looked at Angela. She looked at the boy Marcus. And then she looked across the room at her own 3 children, Robert, Charles, and Diane, who were talking with their cousins, not yet aware that the floor of their world had just shifted beneath them too. She turned back to Angela and said, very quietly, "I think you should leave now." Angela nodded. She took Marcus by the arm, and she left. Carolyn did not tell her children that night. She waited until the guests were gone, until the house was finally quiet, until she was alone in the bedroom she had shared with Thomas for 26 years. And then she went to his study. Caroline had never been the type of wife who went through her husband's things. She believed in privacy. She believed in trust. In 31 years of marriage, she had never opened his mail, never checked his phone, never looked through his desk. She opened the desk, In the bottom left drawer, behind a folder of old tax returns, she found a separate phone. A simple prepaid phone, old and worn from use. She found receipts. A second checking account she had never known existed, opened at a bank across town. Monthly transfers going back, she would later discover, almost 15 years. She found a birthday card, written in a child's handwriting, round, careful letters that said, "Happy birthday, Dad, I love you." From Marcus. The card was worn at the edges. Thomas had clearly held it many times. Caroline sat at that desk until 3 in the morning. She thought about the Tuesday evenings Thomas had spent volunteering at a youth mentorship program across town, or so he had said. For the past 12 years, she thought about the occasional overnight work trips to regional planning conferences. She thought about the years she had accepted without question because she had trusted this man completely. She thought about 17 years. 17 years. Their son Charles was 17 years old, which meant that somewhere in the same year Charles was born, Thomas had begun another life. Carolyn told Robert, Charles, and Diane 2 days after the funeral. She sat them down at the dining room table. The same table where they had eaten 10,000 dinners together as a family, and she told them everything calmly, clearly, without dramatics. The way Caroline did everything. The room was very quiet when she finished. Robert, the oldest, the most like his father, put his head in his hands. Charles stood up and walked out the back door and sat alone in the yard for a long time. Diane reached across the table and took her mother's hands and said, "Mom, I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Caroline squeezed her daughter's hands and said, "I know, baby, I know." The questions came later. They always do. How long? How far? Did he love her? Did he love us more? Did he love us at all? Caroline could answer some of them. She could not answer all of them. And she told her children honestly, some questions about your father, only your father could answer. And we don't have that anymore. We have to decide what to do with the questions that have no answers. That was, perhaps, the hardest part. Not the anger, not the grief, but the unanswerable questions that would live with them forever. 3 weeks after the funeral, Caroline received a letter from Angela. It was brief and careful. Angela wrote that she had not come to the funeral to cause pain. She had come because Marcus had begged her. The boy had known about his father's other family his entire life. Thomas had told him when he was 12 years old. Told him that he had a family across town. That he loved them. That the situation was complicated. That Marcus must never contact them. Marcus had obeyed. For 4 years he had obeyed. When Thomas died, Marcus told his mother he needed to go. He needed to see the family his father had chosen to protect. He needed to understand. Angela wrote, "I am not asking for anything. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you should know that Marcus is a good boy. He is not responsible for any of this. And he is grieving too." Caroline read that letter 4 times. She thought about Marcus, 15 years old, with Thomas's hands, grieving a father who had kept him a secret. A boy who had done nothing wrong. A boy who had, in his own way, been lied to just as thoroughly as Carolyn had. She talked to her children. It was not an easy conversation. Robert said, "I'm not ready." And Caroline respected that. Charles said, "I don't know if I'll ever be ready." Diane said, "What do you want to do, Mom? What do you need?" What Carolyn needed was time. She took 6 months. And at the end of those 6 months, she wrote Marcus a letter. She told him, "You did not cause this. You are not responsible for the choices the adults in your life made. You are Thomas's son. And that means you are, in some complicated and imperfect way, connected to this family. I don't know yet what that looks like, but I am not willing to let an innocent boy carry guilt for sins that were never his." People asked Carolyn, "How do you grieve a man you discovered you never fully knew?" She thought about that question for a long time, and she said, "You grieve what was real." And some of it was real. The Sunday dinners were real. The children are real. The mornings he brought me coffee before I was awake enough to ask for it. Those were real. I grieve those things. I am allowed to grieve those things. And I am also allowed to be angry. Both things are true at the same time. That answer, that quiet, honest, complicated answer is, I think, one of the most dignified things I have ever heard a person say. Today, Carolyn Whitfield is 62 years old. She still works at the library part-time now, 3 days a week. She still reads everything she can get her hands on. Her grandchildren come on Saturdays. Robert eventually came to a place of quiet. Not forgiveness, he will tell you honestly that he is not there yet, but quiet. A decision to stop letting his father's choices take any more from him. Charles took longer. But he got there too. Diane became, in the years after, her mother's closest companion. And Marcus young. Marcus with Thomas's hands, he graduated from high school. The following spring, Carolyn sent him a card. It said, "Congratulations. Work hard, be honest, be better." He wrote back, he said, "Thank you, I will." My dear friends, Carolyn's story is one of the hardest kinds because there is no confrontation, no conversation, no moment where the truth can be addressed and the hurt can be answered. The person who caused the pain is gone. What is left is just the living, the choosing, the deciding every single morning whether the life you have, the children you raised, the love that was real, the woman you have always been, is worth protecting. Carolyn decided it was, and I believe, with everything in me, that she was right. If this story moved you, please like this video. Subscribe to Auntie Grace Speaks, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. New stories every week. Because every story here can change your heart. Auntie Grace.